For our lyrical analysis project, we used the album Nasir by Nas. It is by Alexis Thompson, Isabel Pineda, Rochelle Rolador, and Joanna Bryant. The album Nasir by Nas, the social issue we chose was police brutality. Our themes and motives were condition of community, money, wealth, violence, which could be physical or emotional, endurance, leisure activities, insobriety, self hate, racism, masculinity, and incarceration. The 7 songs that are on the album are Not for Radio, Cop Shot the Kid, White Label, Bonjour, Everything, Adam and Eve, and Simple Things.
Nasir bin Oludara Jones, also called Nas, was born September 14, 1973 in Brooklyn, New York. He dropped out of school in the 8th grade but was able to find a creative outlet that would go on to support him and his family in the years to come. Nas was featured on Main Source's Live at the Barbecue in the early 90s. He got his first break on the soundtrack from Zebrahead. Afterwards, he signed under Columbia and recorded Illmatic, which was published in 1994. His reputation was built on his ability to talk about the inner city street life. These stories of life and struggle based on the inner city were relatable and led Nas to produce albums with other hip-hop artists as well as reggae. Nas has also been featured in film. Most people don't know, but Nas was named after his father, who was also a jazz musician.
So the various description of the themes, there's condition of community, where lyrics that show how the community is, money and wealth, lyrics that have any direct reference to something of monetary value or indirectly touch upon consumer behavior, violence, lyrics that reference physical or emotional violence to themselves or someone else, endurance, being able to withstand adversity, suffering, or pain presented to you or someone else by you, the ability for you to persevere in spite of stress, fatigue, homelessness, poverty, leisure activities, lyrics that support activities that are done for pleasure, enjoyment, and sobriety, lyrics which reference being intoxicated through alcohol or drugs, self-hate, lyrics that reference dislike or harm to themselves, racism, lyrics that directly reference prejudice or discriminative behavior towards a race, as well as lyrics which indirectly show a racial hierarchy, masculinity, lyrics that directly or indirectly show roles or behaviors as a man or as a superior, and incarceration, lyrics that directly or indirectly reference being in jail, going to jail, or having been previously in a penitentiary institution of some kind.
We counted multiple references within one lyric as multiple references. For instance, if a phrase stated, assume the cuffs, the position not new to us, this would be labeled as racism, condition of the community, and endurance. We agreed upon definitions for each theme in order to establish a general basis for how to categorize lyrics under certain themes. If lyrics were repeated throughout the song, we counted the lyric each time as a representation of whichever theme it covered.
Here's a graphical representation of our data. This is the average references per track. We measured the conditions of community, money and wealth, violence, endurance, self-hate, leisure activities, insobriety, racism, incarceration, and masculinity. And as you can see, based on our graph, money and wealth, conditions of community, violence, and racism were the 4 things that were addressed the most throughout all of the tracks on this album.
Our stacked bar plot, the 3 most relevant themes in our album were racism, violence, and money wealth. In the stacked bar plot, we are showing the frequency of how many times these 3 themes showed up in each track. In the graph, you can see that in track 6 and 7, racism is not shown. And how we counted this was by counting how many times each theme showed up in each track to get these frequencies. In the summary statistics chart, it shows the total number of time every theme showed up. In the first column, it has the 7 songs and the total reference, and in the first row, it has the 10 themes and the total references to the themes. If you're looking at it horizontally, it's going to show you how many times each theme showed up in one song. And if you're looking at it vertically, it's going to show you that theme for every single song. So for Condition of Community, it had a total appearance of 29 times throughout the 7 songs. But it had, in Not for Radio, there was a total reference 22 times throughout each of the themes.
We went through the lyrics of the song. We determined how many times each of our themes were mentioned in the songs, and then we put them in a chart. So from this chart, we wanted to gather some statistics about it, just to kind of figure out what our data really says about the information. So the first thing we looked at is the minimum and the maximum. We subtracted the minimum from the maximum in order to get a range. This range actually tells us a lot about our data set, and it tells us what our full spread of our data would be. So then we took the first and third quartile and we subtracted them. The reason we subtracted the first quartile from the third quartile is because a lot of times in statistics, this could be used as an alternative to finding the standard deviation. So we can just kind of get another idea about where everything lies, because we also found the mean. And we can definitely use the mean in order to determine a lot of information about our data. Now, the problem with this particular data is mean is best used for a data set when the numbers are like really, really close together. Sometimes when you have numbers that are spread off, the mean, by it being the average, it just doesn't give you an accurate data set, especially if you have outliers. Now, the median, which we also found, it describes the middle set of the numbers of the data, because you're basically going to put the numbers in order and you're going to take that middle number. So it doesn't matter if it's an outlier or not, whether the outlier is very, very low or very, very high. It doesn't matter, because you're still going to get that middle number, which is where the median puts you. Whereas with the mean, depending on if you have a lot of numbers that are lower or a lot of numbers that are higher, it'll tend to make your numbers off. And that's why our data sometimes is skewed, whether it's skewed left or it's skewed right.
Overall, it is clear that the majority of references counted on the album fell within the categories of racism, violence, or money and wealth. On track number 2, Cops Shot the Kid, the song contained the most references to violence and racism within the album and is in the third quartile in the datasets counting references per track. Just between references to violence and racism, there are a total of 34 counted references in the song. On track number 5, Everything, the song contained the most references to money and wealth and is a celebration of the life Nas has built for himself. Of several songs on the album, including Cop Shot the Kid, Nas focuses on one theme and evaluates it throughout the song.